Yo, 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 it's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another edition of What's the Word? Dirty Bird. I like to do this every Tuesday at 11 a.m. We got a late start today, so this show kicking off at 11:20 today, but normally it's from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. But today, I do want to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. And are the Atlanta Falcons the favorite to win the NFC South? As you guys know, I believe the NFL schedules should be coming out is either this week or next week. And the Falcons, just looking at our schedule, it looks like the Falcons have a pretty tough schedule this year. But I do want to talk about the NFC South and are our Atlanta Falcons the team to beat in the NFC South. I hope you guys so far are having a great week. As you guys come in, please hit that like, hit that subscribe button for your boy. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. As always, continuing to support the channel. Please share out my content, share out this video. As I mentioned, I appreciate you guys always joining me and supporting the channel, liking the videos, subscribing. But I really appreciate you guys. But with that being said, I am going to jump into the chat, say what's up to a couple of you guys that already have joined me. So what's going on, Floyd? Donnelly says, rise up. Yes, they are good enough. And Sonia Howe, what's going on, Sonia? I appreciate you joining me as always. I hope you guys so far are having a great week. My bro, Mad Mike, 1/3 of the heavy hitters in the building. What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me as well. And Dre Murphy says, good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing and feeling on this hot, nice, pretty Tuesday morning? What's going on, man? I hope all is going well with you, Dre. And Philip Crawford, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining as well. And as you guys come in, as I mentioned, hit that like button for your boy. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. And Raymond Collins says, good morning. Good morning, man. I appreciate you joining me. Just want to talk a little bit of Falcons football as always on Tuesdays. And give my thoughts on if the Atlanta Falcons are the favorites. And you guys can put in the chat if you think that our Atlanta Falcons are the favorite to win the NFC South. Personally, I don't believe that the Atlanta Falcons are the favorite to win the NFC South. As you guys know, personally, I feel like whatever team holds the crown is the team to beat. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won the NFC South the last 3 seasons. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So to me personally, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the favorites to win the NFC South this year because they're the team that has the crown. They've been dominating or winning the NFC South the last couple years. I don't know about dominating, but they've won the last 3 NFC South crowns. So personally, I think to be the best, you got to beat the best. And they've been the class of this division for the last 3 seasons. Of course, they had Tom Brady with their team a couple seasons ago. They were able to win a Super Bowl. And then Tom Brady retired. And Baker Mayfield last year kind of picked up right where Tom Brady left off with leading that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team to the playoffs. They actually won a playoff game. Surprisingly, they were able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles in that wild card round, and they played Detroit, I believe, really tough as well in the second round of the playoffs. So I definitely think that the Falcons have a chance, and we know usually in the NFL, the first thing that a coach says coming into training camp or coming into the season is if we win our division, we automatically get that home playoff game, and that's usually the first goal. Is to win your division. So I really feel like the Falcons, we got to do a better job this season of establishing that dominance in our division. And if we're able to win the division, like I mentioned, you get that home field advantage in that first game, which is huge when you go into the playoffs, because basically you only have to win 3 rounds to get to the Super Bowl. So personally, right now, I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the team to beat because they won the division last season and they've won the division the last 3 seasons. But I do want to kind of talk about the state of the NFC South, kind of get you guys' thoughts on how the NFC South may shake up now that the draft is over with, now the free agency is over with. We kind of can see what each team's roster looks like. And just looking at the rosters, I really think that the Falcons, even last year, I really feel like the Falcons have the best roster on paper. We have the most talent out of each and every one of these teams in the NFC South. I do believe that the Buccaneers, I looked at their roster, I believe their roster got worse because they lost, some key pieces to that championship team that they had, and they had to draft some guys. So they lost Carlton Davis, their starting cornerback, who was their number one corner for the last, say, 4 to 5 years. They lost guys like Barrett, Shaq Barrett coming off the edge. I believe he signed with the Miami Dolphins. So their team got kind of got weakened. They lost Devin White, their inside linebacker, who him and Levante David, to me, were one of the best pairings at that linebacker position. But they did lose Devin White in free agency to the Philadelphia Eagles. So their team has lost a lot of those veteran leaders and those playmakers that they had on the roster. They were able to retain or franchise tag Antoine Winfield Jr., who to me is one of the faces of that defense now. Both him and Levante David, were retained with their team, but they lost a lot of depth that they've had throughout those Super Bowl runs and throughout the last couple of years when they kind of been running the division. So kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on where you guys stand on the NFC South and the state of the NFC South. I did take a look as well at the New Orleans Saints and also the Carolina Panthers. And to be honest with you guys, I think the Carolina Panthers have done a pretty solid job in free agency and during the draft of bringing in guys that can help their team. And I think that they're going to be a lot better than they were last year. Now, of course, at the quarterback position, which is the most important position, they have Bryce Young, who didn't play well last year. But I think that the Panthers did a good job in the offseason of building in the trenches as far as building their offensive lineup. And I really like their draft. They did go out and get the kid Leggett out of South Carolina to be like their number one wide receiver. And they were able to bring in Deontay Johnson from the Steelers. So they're one of them teams that's kind of sneaky, sneaking up on everybody. And I think that they're going to be a lot better than they were last season. But they did lose some key pieces on their defense, on the defensive side of the ball. But they were able to keep their anchor with re-signing their defensive tackle for the Carolina Panthers. So they're going to be one of those teams that I definitely think is an up-and-coming team. As far as the Saints are one of those rosters at this point. Of course, there are bitter rivals. And to me, their team is kind of their window is kind of closing to me. Like they have guys on their team, but they're a team that's aging. They have guys like Cam Jordan that's really up there in age, long in the tooth. They got Demario Davis still at that middle linebacker position, and they still got guys, Lattimore out on the outside at that corner position. They drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry, and on the offensive side of the ball, they have Derek Carr at the quarterback position, which he kind of struggled last year. Still have Taysom Hill, still have Alvin Kamara and those guys, and the Olaves at the wide receiver position. So they're going to be a team that's always there to be reckoned with. But to me, they're kind of long in the tooth on the defensive side of the ball, and they've lost they need some more youth on that defense. As far as the New Orleans Saints, they do still have the Honey Badger as well, but a lot of their guys that are their premier defensive players are guys that are up there in age at this point. So I really feel like they have more names than they have impact players on the defensive side of the ball. I think their offensive side of the ball will be the strength of their team moving forward. But with that being said, I'm going to jump into the chat really quick and just say what's up to a couple of you guys and gals that may have jumped into the chat while I've been talking here. And Dre says, me personally, now that we have Kirk, 2 Chainz, Cousin, I think we're the favorite to win the NFC South point blank in a period. Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the odds-on favorites in Vegas, we probably will be the odds-on favorites to win the division, which I think we were favorite, if I'm not mistaken, last year as well. But at this point, I don't want to go into the season just automatically assuming we're going to win the division. I really feel like at this point, this team is going to have to show me, because I really feel like the last 2 seasons, we could have made the playoffs, but for whatever reason, due to coaching, due to poor quarterback play, due to poor decisions, late game decisions, due to the defense not being able to get timely stops, there was a lot of reasons of why this Falcons team hadn't made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. But to me, definitely last season, this Falcons team should have been in the playoffs. Um, but I really feel like coaching was one of the biggest factors of why this Falcons team, to me, underachieved. And Dre says, me personally, I think Baker can get right. Mayfield will come back down to earth. In other words, will go back to the old Baker. Can't get right, Baker. He lost his offensive coordinator to the Panthers. Yeah, that was crucial. Yeah, Dave Canales was a big reason why that Buccaneers team played really well last year. So I definitely agree with that, with him being the offensive coordinator and him going over to Carolina. And that's another reason why I think that Carolina will be better this year, is because Dave Canales is a really good play caller. He showed us that last year, that he understands, situational football and things of that nature. And he one of those guys that, as you mentioned, a quarterback whisperer. He's one of those guys that understands, balance, understands how to protect the quarterback by using the run game. And the Buccaneers, like I said, they played really, really well last year under Dave Canales. So I definitely agree with you. I don't know how much Baker Mayfield will regress, because I really feel like Baker Mayfield, personally, I think that Baker Mayfield is a solid quarterback. I know K Styles doesn't like Baker Mayfield, and it's a lot of talking heads like on TV and stuff like that don't care for Baker Mayfield. But personally, I think he just rubbed the media the wrong way when he was with the Cleveland Browns, because he had all of the commercials and things of that nature, and they thought he hadn't earned, all of the things that he was getting as far as the stuff he was doing in the media. So I really feel like he took a lot of criticism, but I think that he's a better player than a lot of people give him credit for. And one thing I like about Baker Mayfield is he's a guy that's very fiery. He's a guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder, and he's a guy that's very confident. And usually when you're a guy that exudes confidence, your team is going to feed off of that. And you've seen that last year with that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, is because Baker Mayfield walks around like a number one pick, like he walks around knowing that he's the man, and he is a guy that exudes and oozes confidence. I really feel like that bode well for guys that was on that team, especially the Mike Evans. We've seen him and Mike Evans had that connection, and they have a lot of veteran, guys on that offense as well. But I really feel like that Buccaneers team last year fed off of Baker Mayfield's chippiness and his chip on the shoulder type of mentality. So I'm one of the few that thinks that Baker Mayfield is actually a solid quarterback. And pretty much he doesn't really rub me the wrong way. Some of the stuff he does, like headbutting people and stuff without a helmet on, now that I think that's a little bit over the top. But as far as his game, he can spin the football. He's one of those guys we've seen in the game in Atlanta, where he throws the game-winning touchdown to K. Otten, leads that offense down the field for a game-winning drive. That Baker is one of those guys that can get the job done when it's all said and done. And let's see. Jonte Rozier, what's going on, man? He says, what's good, Jew? I enjoy you and your wife's show as well. Good job. Well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, you guys definitely go over to the You and I podcast. Me and my wife, Amanda, yeah, we talk about life. We talk about marriage and family and children. So y'all definitely jump over there as well and hit that subscribe button for us over there as well. And you guys also start dropping your questions as well in the chat. And Xavier Littman, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me as well. But like I said, I really feel like this Falcons team, I do believe we will win the division. I really feel like we have the most talented roster, but it's really going to come down to the players, and it's going to definitely come down to coaching in late game situations, because that's what really came back to bite uh, our last head coach and Arthur Smith in the backside. Is he was just one of those guys that was stubborn. To me, he didn't have a plan as far as that quarterback position. He played musical chairs, moving Desmond Ritter in and out of the lineup. To me, the team just never found rhythm. It never found its rhythm. It didn't know, who was the leader of the team. And I really feel like when situations like that happen, good news is we had a really strong locker room, because we had strong leaders like Calais Campbell and Grady Jarrett. And I really feel like the team did a good job of sticking together, and it really wasn't a split locker room, because in most cases when you have quarterback, carousel like the way we had last season, usually that would divide a locker room. But our locker room did a pretty good job last year sticking together. You didn't see any of these players pointing the finger at one another. You really seen those guys battle it out to the very, last game when it came down to playoff implications and things of that nature. And William Amy says, make or break season. I don't know if it's a make or break season for the Falcons. I really don't feel like it's a make or break season because you have a new coaching staff coming in with Raheem Morris. So I really feel like your first season, you'll get a little bit of leeway because this offense and defensive staff have to come in and they have to kind of like set their schemes and get players that fit their scheme. So I really feel like at this point they're still watching film on different guys, and that's what Raheem Morris kind of talked about in the video I did with about Richie Grant. It's kind of like they're trying to figure out by looking at the tape of the players from the last couple seasons that's already on this roster, and then they added guys from the draft, but they got to give these guys roles. So I wouldn't say it's a make or break season, but it is a make or break season for certain players, like guys that are on their last deal of their contract, guys like AJ Terrell, guys like Kyle Pitts. I feel like a lot of these guys, this is make or break for them because they may be looking to get a new contract in the next couple seasons or after this season. But outside of that, I really feel like Raheem Morris is probably safe for the next 2 to 3 years. Like 3 years is usually the amount of time or the leash, how long the leash is when you're dealing with Arthur Blank. He's not a guy that usually makes knee-jerk decisions. And because they have a personal relationship with Raheem Morris, he's a guy that's familiar with the city of Atlanta, familiar with the front office because he was here with Dan Quinn's regime. I really feel like they're going to give him time to kind of change the culture and build this thing the way that he wants to see it, built. But I really feel like Raheem Morris is going to get these guys ready to play. And based off of our draft, based off of what we currently have on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball, there's no excuse for this team not to be in the playoffs. At worst, just looking at this team, at worst, we should be, I think it's 17 games now, so we should be no less than 10-7. That's what I'm looking at. I really feel like this team should at least go 10-7, just looking at the talent that you have. And 10-7 should be good enough to either win the division or at least get you in the wild card, in the wild card round, or possibly a team that's right there on the brink of being a wild card team to make the playoffs. And let's see here. Dre Murphy says that front seven is going to be a problem to deal with. Going to have offensive coordinators up all night having nightmares. Yeah, that the front seven is going to be really, really good, and I really feel like everything is going to be predicated, off of pressure. It's going to be predicated off of on first and second down, limiting teams to 2-3 yards. Don't allow them to get in third and short situations. Make them have to be in third and medium or third and long. So 3rd and 5 and longer. And if you can get force teams to be in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, I really feel like it's going to put a lot of pressure on teams to get to keep the drive going. And I really feel like that's when you're going to see Jimmy Lake, Raheem Morris. They're going to dial up pressure, meaning corners coming off the edge, the linebackers. Made a video yesterday about how the Falcons linebackers are going to eat this season. I really feel like because we've brought in so many big, powerful defensive linemen in this draft and currently on this roster already, I really feel like the linebackers are going to be able to just run sideline to sideline and wreak havoc. And because we have linebackers that are like Tasmanian Devils, as I talked about last season, and Caden Ellis, Nate Landman, Troy Anderson, now JD Bertrand, these guys are going to be in attack mode. Like these guys are not going to be on their heels. They're going to be able to play freely. And I really feel like there's going to be a lot of stunts with the defensive line. And that's why they wanted guys that were like defensive tackles / defensive ends, or guys that were like 3 technique, but really defensive ends, not really outside linebackers. Guys like Brandon Dorless, who's like 6'3", 300 pounds or 285. They wanted guys like Ruko Rororo, who's not a guy that's, the smallish edge rusher type. So these guys are not, 6'2", 6'3", 245, 250. These guys are 280 and up, 285 to 300. So I really feel like they went with the bigger, powerful defensive linemen because they wanted to allow the guys that we had on the roster already. I think they've seen that, Caden Ellis. They've seen guys like Nate Landman. They've seen guys like Troy Anderson already on this roster, Arnold Ebiketie. These guys can flow sideline to sideline, and these guys are athletes. So these guys are going to be able to use, do what they do best, which is flow sideline to sideline and make plays in the backfield, make plays, in the, when they drop into coverage and things of that nature. So I really expect a big season from our linebackers. I really feel like they're not going to have, a lot of pressure on them to cover guys. I really feel like they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on opposing offenses to get the ball out their hands quick. They're not going to allow teams to just sit back there and hold the ball and, put all of that pressure on the secondary. I really feel like our front seven is going to be so good that I really feel like it's going to put so much pressure on opposing offensive lines and quarterbacks and things of that nature that our secondary is not going to have to cover for a really long time. And let's see here. And William Amy says Richie Grant better show up for real. I'm tired of him getting toasted by tight ends and running backs and slot receivers. Yeah, we're going to see Richie Grant play better. Watch this. Mark my words. I really feel like this season we're going to see Richie Grant play a lot better because I think that they're going to use him kind of in that like rover type role. He's going to be a safety, but I think that they're going to move him around. They're going to put him in the box. They're going to allow him to do different things to use his skill set. But as I mentioned again, I think the defensive line is going to be the focal point, the front seven. So the linebackers and the guys in the trenches, I really feel like they're going to be the stars of the defense, and they're going to put so much pressure on opposing teams that the back end is not going to be able to be exposed as much as it's been exposed the last couple of years. Because the Falcons' biggest issue, if we be completely honest, over the last, I say, decade, is just not having pass rush. Like when you don't have pass rush, that puts so much pressure on your corners and on your safeties. And I really feel like if you look at it, I really feel like that has some of the reason why, guys like AJ Terrell and why the secondary, the corners and things of that nature, they haven't had the interception numbers. I really feel like it kind of is a byproduct of not having a front seven that can get home and get home quick. Like if a quarterback has all day in today's game with the rules the way that they are, it makes it super, super hard and tough for these corners to be out there on the island one-on-one with these athletes, guys like Drake London at 6'5", guys like Kyle Pitts at 6'6", guys like Mike Evans at 6'5". A lot of these guys are running 4.40s, guys that are, really good as far as vertical. They can go up and catch the football. And usually your cornerbacks and guys in the secondary are not going to be as big as those tight ends and as big as those as those wide receivers. So I really feel like that's the biggest issue and has been an issue, an Achilles heel for this Falcons team, since 2016, 2017, is just not having consistent pass rush. So if you don't have consistent pass rush, you're going to see guys struggling. I really feel like that was another issue with Richie Grant. Yes, at times Richie Grant's technique wasn't the best, but I really feel like we gave quarterbacks a lot of time at times we gave them time where they could scan the field, find a mismatch, and then just throw the ball up. And if you look at a lot of the games where Richie Grant was beat, especially against tight ends, the game against the Cardinals and then the game against the Buccaneers, it was just he was in bad matchups because I don't think people really realize how big and how good the Cardinals tight end is. I think McBride is like 6'6" or 6'5". So he's going up against a Richie Grant, who I don't think is even 6 feet tall, to be honest. So he had the mismatch. That was just a mismatch in that situation. And I feel like in last year's Falcons team, just in general, in certain games, I don't think we did a good job of making adjustments either. Because in that game, I would have took Richie Grant off the tight end personally, or I would have started to blitz a little bit more to make the ball come out quick. At times when you see that one player is being exposed, that's coaching by making the proper adjustments. Yes, Richie Grant, as I mentioned, at times his technique wasn't the best, but I just think that in certain situations, it was just bad matchups. And we didn't do, our coaches didn't do their due diligence. When you see somebody getting cooked, that's when you have to, switch up your coverages. And sometimes you have to take that person, either take them out the game, bench them, and put DeMarco Hellams in the game, or put a corner, you have to make some type of adjustment. You can't just, keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. And let's see here. Anthony White, what's going on, man? He says he has a lot of young defensive linemen that he can develop for the future. He has 17 sacks last year in LA with 2 rookie edge rushers. So let's see how it goes. I still want a veteran edge rusher. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Anthony. Like, I really feel like last season, Raheem Morris did a really good job with the young guys that they brought in. And I kind of mentioned that in my last live show, I believe. If you look at this draft and you go back and look at the Rams draft last season, the guys they drafted in the trenches, we kind of just took a carbon copy of what they did, and they went out and drafted similar players like defensive ends, bigger guys, 270 plus, 280, guys that can play both in the interior of the defensive line, but also can move outside and play the edge as well. So I really feel like they've done a good job of mixing and matching and bringing in players that are super versatile. When you have guys that are versatile the way that our defensive linemen and our linebackers are, you can move guys around. And that usually creates confusion for opposing offenses, and it gives you mismatches. That's why I say I think it's going to be a lot of one-on-one situations for guys like Arnold Epikady on the edge, guys like Lorenzo Carter, guys like Caden Ellis. When these guys decide to blitz or play out there on the edge, Troy Anderson, I really feel like there's going to be a lot of confusion because we're going to be running a lot of stunts and things of that nature. And because we got guys that can move, and I really feel like that's the reason they didn't go after like a Tavondre Sweat, somebody that's like 330 pounds, because I really think that they wanted guys that can move, not guys that can just necessarily just sit and be like a one tech, but guys that can also run stunts. And usually those bigger guys, outside of Jordan Davis, outside of Tavondre Sweat, because those guys are like freak athletes. We've seen Jordan Davis at the combine run a crazy 40. Some of those bigger guys, they're freak of natures. Most guys that are 330 or 320 plus, they can't really do a lot of stunts and stuff like that. They're not the fastest or the most agile. So I really feel like they wanted players that were a little bit more agile, so they can be a little bit more exotic when it comes to the blitz packages and things of that nature. And Jonte Rozier says, do you think this is a make or break year for Terry? No, I don't think it's a make or break year for Terry. If you're referring to Terry Fontenot, no, I don't think so. I really think that Terry Fontenot is safe. And the reason I think he's safe is because they really wanted to bring in, I think, a coach that would pair with Terry Fontenot. And I really feel like that was one of the big reasons why the Falcons didn't go after Bill Belichick, to be completely honest, is they wanted a coach that was going to be collaborative. And that's something that Raheem Morris, if you see those guys together, Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris, those guys are like two peas in a pod. Like, those guys are, in lockstep. And that's what you need out of your head coach and out of your front office, is you need those guys not to agree on everything, but you need those guys to be able to come to a compromise. And we've seen in so many instances in different organizations where the coach wants one thing, the GM wants another thing. The GM wants certain type of players. He has a certain type of vision for what he wants the team to look like and the roster to look like. The coach has a totally different, ideal of how he wants the team to be structured. So I really feel like Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot and Arthur Blank and these guys, I really feel like they're on one accord. So I think that that's the main thing, is you want your coach and your GM to have the same mindset, and for those guys to be able to work together successfully without, there being, that separation or that tension of, I want one thing, he wants another thing, and we're really not ever agreeing on anything. So I really think that was one of the main reasons why Bill Belichick wasn't chosen as the head coach. And I think that's another reason why Terry is safe, because as long as Raheem Morris is here, I don't see them getting rid of Terry Fontenot, because they both talked about with the Michael Penix pick that they both were in lockstep. Terry Fontenot liked the idea of having a quarterback of the future. Raheem Morris fell in love with Michael Penix. So they all were on one accord, and that's like the most important thing to me when you're looking at a head coach and the GM and the front office pairing together. And William Amy says, I like us playing press cover and man to man. If we blitz a lot, teams gonna adjust quick during halftime. I think it's gonna be more of a zone team. I think you're gonna see a lot of zone blitzes. I don't think it's gonna be a ton of man to man. I think you'll see us play man to man at times just to mix it up. But if you go look at the history and go look at the Rams last year, go look at what Jimmy Lake did at Washington on defense, and just look at what he likes to do in general. He likes to run a lot of exotic blitzes. He likes to run a lot of zone coverage. We know that Raheem Morris, because he was with Dan Quinn, he also ran a lot of zone coverage as well. But I think also you got to think about this Falcons team and the structure and the way that the team is built. We really don't have necessarily a lot of great press man-to-man corners. Yes, AJ Terrell plays well in both zone and man. Yes, Clark Phillips is another guy that can play man, press man, and zone. But I really feel like when you start playing a lot of man to man, a lot of man to man, you want your corners to be all pro. And I really can't say for sure that Clark Phillips is going to be a guy that's going to be locked down. AJ Terrell has shown us that he can be locked down, but even at points last year, I think when you play a lot of man to man, you get exposed. And we've seen that last year with teams running a lot of crossing routes and stuff like that. When you play too much man to man, you tire out your cornerbacks because you're not covering just an area. You're covering that man. So if that man is doing a lot of over routes, running all the way across the field, you got to be able to get through all of that trash that's in the middle of the field, meaning linebackers and other rub routes and stuff like that. So I feel like you're going to see a mixture of both man and zone, but I expect us to run more zone coverages with this particular coaching staff because that's what they like to do. But I do expect it to be a lot of aggressive defense. And personally, if you ask me which one do I prefer, I like both man and zone, but I think in zone situations, cornerbacks and safeties get a chance to make more plays on the football as far as interceptions. Because when there's a deflection, if you're in zone, your eyes are on the quarterback usually in zone, meaning if the ball gets tipped up, you know what a football is. A lot of the times, if you look at last year with AJ Terrell and a lot of our cornerbacks, they really weren't in position a lot of the times to make interceptions because their back was to the quarterback or their back was to the football. Because I know one game I was watching, AJ Terrell was running with his back turned and the football literally hit him right in the arm. All he had to do was turn around. The ball was like right thrown directly at him. So I really feel like playing that zone, you're going to get a lot more opportunities. And the prime example of that, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, we know that Dan Quinn loves to run a lot of zone, coverages. And that's one of the reasons why the kid that they have over there in Dallas, I can't think of his name right now, but he led the league in interceptions and pick sixes. That's another reason why he had a lot of interceptions because he was able just to jump a lot of routes. And because you had Michael Parsons screaming off the edge and you had those guys, the Dante Fowlers on their team, the Dorrance Armstrongs on the Cowboys, they have a number of guys, Lawrence coming off the edge on their team as well, because they have that front seven that gets pressure and they get pressure on the quarterback really fast. When you're in zone, that usually gives corners the chance to jump routes. And we seen that last year. I can't think of the kid's name. If you guys know who I'm talking about, put it in the chat. But I can't think of his name right now, but he had a big year for the Cowboys. He was like their third corner, but he ended up starting because Stephon Diggs' brother Trayvon Diggs ended up getting injured. But he had so many pick sixes last year just because the defense was getting pressure really quick. The ball was coming out fast. His eyes was on the quarterback. He was able to come up with a lot of interceptions just off reading and reacting. And Brian Peoples, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me. I hope all is going well with you. And let's see. And Philip Crawford says, what rookie do you think will stand out and what vet will take a step forward? So the rookie that will stand out, I keep saying JD Bertrand. That's the guy that I'm going to go stick with. I like Braylon Trice as well at that edge position. but I'm gonna go with JD Bertrand if he actually gets out there on the field. I don't know how much he's going to get on the field at the linebacker position because you have Caden Ellis, you have Nate Landman, and you have Troy Anderson in front of him. But for what I've seen on tape, just me personally, if I had to put money down on who I think will have the best career out of all of these guys that we drafted this year, I would say JD Bertrand. To me, just looking at his film, looking at his highlights and stuff like that, the way that he plays football, he plays it very violent. He's one of those guys that reads and reacts, and he gives me Luke Kuechly vibes. He just gives me the vibes of a very smart, keen linebacker, has great instincts, things that you really can't teach. He's a great tackler, but he's not a guy that second guesses himself. He's one of those guys that just plays fast, plays downhill, and just reads and reacts. So I really feel like JD Bertrand could be a guy that is like a future starting inside linebacker or Mike linebacker. Because if you look at his game, go look at his highlights and things of that nature when he was at Notre Dame. He's one of those guys that just made plays. He was always around the football, just has a knack for the football, similar to what we've seen last year with Nate Landman. To me, Nate Landman was the biggest surprise last season because of his ability just to make plays, punching the ball out at key moments, always being around the football, whether it's recovering a fumble, whether it's getting an interception, whether it's blitzing the quarterback. It seemed like Nate Landman was just like I said, a Tasmanian devil. He was all over the place. And I see similar things with JD Bertrand, whether he's playing special teams, whether he's playing on the defensive side of the ball, just dropping back into coverage, or whether he's coming up to stop the run or blitzing. He just seems like he's a guy that understands the game of football, understands where he should be at all times. And I really think that he'll be the best rookie, especially if he actually plays this year. And then for the vet, which vet takes the next step forward? I'm not sure if this is going to be the vet that steps forward, but the vet that I want to step forward is Arnold Epikady. He's the guy that I really want, to take that next step and be that pass rusher that we thought he was when we drafted him out of Penn State. Now, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and give you one other guy, and that'll be Clark Phillips. I really feel like Clark Phillips is the guy that I think will step up because to me, he showed last year, even as a rookie, that he just exudes confidence. That dude is just not afraid of anything. He already feels like he's a number one corner. Like he's not a guy that's afraid to make mistakes. And if you look at the way that he plays the game of football, he's just a physical guy. He's another guy that's always around the football, making tackles against, in the backfield against the running back, batting down footballs. If you look at his technique, very technically sound as a corner, understands how to use the sideline as an extra defender when trying to pin a wide receiver against the sideline, where they only can get 1 foot in bounds. Understand that he's a smaller corner, but understanding angles and things of that nature to give him the advantage. So I really feel like Clark Phillips is the guy that I think will take the biggest step as as a guy, second year player. But I'm hoping that it's Arnold Epikady. He's the guy that I want to take the next step. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that's who I'm praying that he, can become a 10 sack guy a year or a guy that consistently wreaks havoc. And let's see here. I'm going to keep scrolling here. So let's see. So Dre Murphy says this defensive line reminds me of the defensive line they had on the 2016 team with all these big guys that they got in the trenches. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I don't know if they're quite 2016, but I could see that. I could see that why you think that. My biggest thing is on that 2016 team, I think what's similar between the two is that you have depth. And that's something that I think is huge. And you can't really put value on it because, yes, you can have a TJ Watt, you can have an Aaron Donald, guys that's going to get you 20 sacks in the season, 15 sacks in the season. But what happens if that one guy that gives you, those sacks get injured? That's the problem when you don't have depth, when you just relying on one star guy to be the game record every game instead of having multiple guys. And that's what we had last season. And that's what I feel with this team. You have Braylon Trice, you have Brandon Dorless. Now you have Grady Jarrett, Onyemata. You have Lorenzo Carter. You have Tyquan Graham. You have what's the big guy that got injured last year, Katavius Street. You may bring back a Calais Campbell. And then we're not even counting the guys that are the Zach Harrisons from last year from out of Ohio State. So I mean, I just named probably 8 to 9 to 10 guys right there on this team that give you depth. So to be honest, it's like we may not even be able to get all these guys on the field every Sunday. Some of these guys may not even be able to dress on Sunday. So I really feel like in training camp, it's going to really be a lot of competition to even get a helmet on Sundays for some of these guys because we've loaded this team up on defense. I didn't even mention LaCale London, another guy that plays on the interior. Eddie Goldman, I see right here, 330 just said that. Eddie Goldman, he said he hopes Eddie Goldman works out. That's another guy. So it just goes to show you we have so many weapons, on this team as far as on the defensive line that I really feel like that's what I'm seeing out of this team. What reminds me of 2016 is you just have so many guys that can get the job done. And I thank you guys for dropping it in the chat. I hadn't scrolled all the way down, but you guys said it. Jerome said it. Deron Bland. That was the guy I was trying to, I couldn't think of his name out of Dallas, the corner from Dallas. Deron Bland. Yeah, he had a big season last year, but the reason he played really well is because Dan Quinn runs a lot of zone. They, blitz and things of that nature. But because that front seven wreaks havoc, Deron Bland knows I can jump routes because the ball's coming out. The quarterback don't have time to make a 5 or 7 step drop because Michael Parsons is, coming down in his face. So he's going to have to throw the ball quick. And as soon as that ball come out on a quick comeback route or a quick swing pass, Deron Bland was already shooting the gap, knifing through for an interception. And Miss Maggie T, what's going on? I appreciate you joining me this morning. I hope all is well is going on with you. And you guys definitely go over to Atlanta Falcons Nation, all of the channels, Mad My Sports, 6 Man, K Styles, all of the channels that we have. Y'all go and hit the like, subscribe button for us. We appreciate you guys continuing to support us. And let's see. And Floyd Donnelly says, move Troy to DE. I think he's talking about Troy Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, to move him to defensive end. Yeah, I think Troy Anderson will. That's why I said, again, I think the linebackers are going to be kind of like the focal point. The front seven will be the focal point. But I think that they're going to eat because you got to cover. You're not going to be able to hold up. The offensive line's not going to be able to hold up against these bigger defensive linemen. Because Grady Jarrett, because Onyemata, these guys are able to use their short area quickness to get pressure, in the middle of that offensive line and defensive line. If you're able to create havoc right in the quarterback's face, that's one of the reasons why Aaron Donald was so special, is because he's already the closest guy to the quarterback at that defensive tackle / 3-tech position. So just his mere quickness and power, usually he got a lot of sacks just knifing through. As soon as the quarterback snaps the ball, he's knifing through, making a play. And the quarterback doesn't even have time to run. The quarterback doesn't have time to throw the ball away because 9 times out of 10, he's still in the pocket. And if he's under center, he's definitely not going to be able to get away from Aaron Donald or Grady Jarrett. Those guys are too quick as far as short area quickness. They're not the fastest guys from sideline to sideline, but just moving in that short area for their size, they're guys that move really, really quick. So that's just a split second. Like quarterbacks hate pressure coming right from the A gap, right up right up from the middle where the center and the guard, between the center and the guards. They hate when pressure comes right there because there's no pocket to step up into. And you're taught as a quarterback to step up in a pocket. That's the first thing you're taught as a quarterback. When you're going to drop back, they tell you to step up in the pocket. So I really feel like Troy Anderson and those linebackers are going to have a field day. And let's see here. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And we're going to be on for a little bit longer. We probably got about another, I'll say probably like another 5 to 10 minutes. But it's going to be based off of you guys, if you guys still got questions. And Troy Hall says, hello, Jew 2K. Happy Tuesday to you and everyone in the chat. On the way to work, but want to tell you to continue the great content. Hey, man, I appreciate it, Tony. I'm definitely gonna keep the content rolling for you guys. Like you guys know, I'm passionate about this Atlanta Falcons team. I'm passionate about the game of football and basketball. So you guys know I'm gonna continue to give you this content. And Tony Dre says, laugh out Juice, since you didn't come on at 11:20, can we get them 20 minutes back and stay on to 12:20, bro? Yeah, we might stay on to 12:20. We're gonna see if what the question is looking like. And Floyd says JD Bertrand will be him. Yeah, most definitely. All right, so you guys got to drop your questions in the chat. If you got some more guys got some more questions, if y'all want me to keep the live stream open, y'all definitely drop those questions in the chat. And Floyd Down said, I hope health doesn't kill us, that injury bug. Yeah, but that's another reason why I say you got to have depth. Yeah, injuries are going to happen. I see that, you see that game in and game out in the game of football in general. Everybody gets nicked up and injured or get hurt. Now, you might not get injured for the season, but there's going to be a tweaked ankle here or there. There's guys that's still even out there on the field on Sundays that's not 100% 9 times out of 10. Once the season starts, everybody's kind of banged up. So that's why you want to have the second and third string guys be ready to play and also be quality players. If you got a team that has those second and third string guys that are pretty quality players, then usually your team is going to play well. And Dre says, I heard that they were checking out Spencer Rattler, but decided to go with Michael Penix instead. Yeah, Spencer Rattler was one of those guys that they were looking at, and I thought that he was going to be the pick because I just knew that they were going to get one of the pass rushers, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Layatu Latu. But when they decided to go with Michael Penix, I really feel like they were looking for the next franchise guy. And I don't think that they thought that Spencer Rattler is ready to go now. I think that they had Penix a little bit higher on their board. Now, for some reason, if one of those teams would have traded up in front of us and took Penix, then I think that Spencer Rattler would have been one of those guys they tried to take in like the second round or probably traded up in the late first round. But I'm not sure if anybody had Spencer Rattler like higher than Penix on their draft board. I hope not. To me personally, I think Penix is the better prospect. Now, Spencer Rattler could turn into one of those guys, and I actually like Spencer Rattler and thought he was a pretty good player. But I think if I had to choose between the two, I would go with Michael Penix just for the mere fact of if Kirk Cousins is not able to play game one, which I think he will, knock on wood, but if something were to ever happen, I think that Michael Penix is probably more ready to play now because he played so many years in college. And because he played the way that he played in college, I really think that he's like NFL ready. I don't really think that Michael Penix needs a ton of years of sitting behind Kirk Cousins. I really feel like if Penix is able to sit behind Kirk Cousins for a full season, I think next season he will be ready to go. Now, I don't know if he'll play because that all is barring how well Kirk Cousins plays this season. If Kirk Cousins gets us to the NFC Championship game, or even if Kirk Cousins gets us to the playoffs and say he wins the wild card round or he wins he gets close to winning the wild card round, but we make the playoffs, I think you still could see Kirk Cousins here next season because his deal is really a 2-year deal. So it's like 50 million this year, 50 million next year, and then this guaranteed money for the most part is gone in year 3 and 4. So I could easily see Kirk Cousins playing well enough to be here for the next 2 seasons. But after that, I don't think he's going to be able to hold off Penix from getting out there. And if we have, for some reason, like a terrible season and Kirk Cousins is out there playing, then we could see a competition next year where Penix could possibly be the starter. Now, whether you trade Kirk Cousins or something like that after that point, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, I definitely think Penix, the reason they went with Penix is because he's the guy that they think could be the next franchise guy. And let's see here. And I'm gonna jump back into the chat, see if I missed some of you guys' questions. And Floyd Donnelly says, 11-6. I would bet 11-6. Yeah, I could see 11-6, but I say no less than 10-7. That's why I'm going with. I think we could, when the schedule comes out, then I'll of course do another video, kind of giving my thoughts. But I'll say probably 10-7 is my bar for this team. Like, it's no reason why, God forbid, a lot of guys get injured, then that's a whole nother story. But if we stay healthy for the most part this season, as far as the main guys, the Bijans, the Kyle Pitts, the Drake Londons, as long as those guys are out there on the field, Kirk Cousins, I think that this Falcons team should win 10 games. They should win 10 games this season because we went 7-10 3 years in a row. So I feel like Kirk Cousins should be at least worth 3 more wins. I really feel like he should be having a veteran quarterback. I think we'll win at least 3 more games. And Raymond Collins says, think we'll add another defensive gem piece. To be honest, I really don't know how much money the Falcons have left over. Somebody look that up for me. I'm about to try to look it up here. I don't know how much cap the Falcons still have left. But if they do, I think the only splash we probably are looking at is like a Calais Campbell resigning. So I don't know if you guys think that if you guys think that that's an actual um like a splash signing. Personally, I think it's like I don't know if I would consider it a splash signing, but I think that it will be smart to bring Calais back. But the only two guys I can really see coming back is either Calais Campbell or Bud Dupree. Those are the two guys that I'm thinking if the Falcons are going to make any other defensive signings, those are the two guys that I think that they could possibly bring in. Because the other guys that are still out there on the market, I think they're going to be too expensive. Like the kid Justin Simmons, I don't know if he's still on the market, but I know he was on the market at one point, and it still was a couple of like big name receivers and a couple of names still out there that were really good, like as far as on defense. But a lot of those guys that are still out there on the waiver wire is either they're asking for too much money or they have some type of injury history or they're an older veteran type player. But I think just bringing back somebody that's familiar with the locker room, just the leadership that Calais Campbell brings, I think is solid for having him. To me, Bud Dupree played well as well last season. He's a veteran as well. So I wouldn't mind bringing either of those guys back because they were on the team last year and they're familiar with the chemistry, meaning they already got chemistry with the players that are on the team for the most part. So I really feel like that's the only defensive gems I could see us signing at this point. And DirtyBird says, Drew, what do you think about them trading up to get row your boat? Losing one of them third round picks. Me personally, I think they could just stay there and still got him or took Newton instead. To be honest, when they traded up for Ruka Rororo, I was kind of shocked by it because I thought they were trading up for like a bigger, well-known name. But one thing that I have learned with Terry Fontenot and with this front office that I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt is they went after Matthew Bergeron. If you guys remember last year, they traded up in the second round, I believe, and took Matthew Bergeron. And I had never heard of who Matthew Bergeron was, but the way that he balled out last year, and then hearing that the Dallas Cowboys thought about drafting him in that late first round, and they decided to go with the defensive tackle instead, I really give these guys the benefit of the doubt. And I stated that for Ruka Rororo, he's a scheme fit type of player, similar to Bergeron, meaning he fits what this defensive coaching staff wants to do. So they have a particular role for him. So I think that it was actually a good pickup because I think that Rook is going to be a good player for what they're going to ask him to do. I really feel like he's kind of going to be a Grady Jarrett-esque type player, meaning he can move up around on the defensive line because he's a guy that plays with relentless effort, guy that's very strong, a guy that's not going to get pushed around in the trenches, a guy that'll make guys around him job easier because the way we built our defensive line is like we're going to be like a boa constrictor. We're going to be like one of those teams where we're going to just try to collapse the pocket around quarterbacks and get sacks that way. So I really feel like Braylon Trice, Lorenzo Carter, the linebackers that I mentioned, Caden Ellis and Landman, even cornerbacks that come in like on those cat blitzes when you blitz in the corner off the edge and disguising blitzes and things of that nature, because you have those big body defensive linemen that eat up a lot of space and make guys on the offensive line have to double team. You can't double team everybody. So if you got a defensive line, say a 3-down lineman of Onyemata, Grady, and Aurora role, and then on the outside, Brandon Trice, and on the other side, Lorenzo Carter. Because those big guys, Grady Jarrett is disruptive. We know that David Onyemata is disruptive, and then we believe that Rook is going to be disruptive. That basically is a disaster for the offensive line, basically, because they're not going to be able to double team. The center can only help on one side, so he's either going to help off of help on Grady or help on Onyemata. That means that somebody going to be singled up. Either Rook going to have a one-on-one situation, and then the two guys on the outside coming off the edge are going to have one-on-one situations, but you're not going to be able to double team. The center can only help one side. So I really feel like that's what they're trying to do with this pass rush is, put pressure and collapse the pocket. So you basically put quarterbacks in a bind, basically, and put offensive linemen in a bind, because we basically gonna find out, the weak point, on that offensive line. And I really feel like that's what this Falcons team is doing. Is you're only as good as your weakest link, and we seen that years ago when we had guys like Jalen Mayfield on our defensive, on our offensive line, when we were struggling to find a center after Alex Mack retired, and we didn't have, guys that could actually hold up at that center and guard position. A lot of people don't pay attention to the center and the guard position. We always focus on the offensive tackle, whether it's the right or left tackle. We don't focus on having a good center, having good guards. And we seen last year with the draft of Matthew Bergeron, we seen just him being stout and being able to hold up against those powerful inside, interior pass rushers like Aaron Donald, like the guys, the defensive tackles that you face week in and week out. You got to have an offensive line that can, hold their ground. So I really feel like that's, the main thing. And we have a few more minutes, 2 more minutes. So let me see if I can hit about 1 or 2 more questions here. And I appreciate you guys dropping these questions as well. Let's see. Yeah. So Dre Murphy says Floyd Donnelly, even Montez Sweat went to Chicago Bears instead of coming to us. I still prefer him over Chase Young. Yeah, we had our opportunity. We tried to get Montez Sweat, and we seen in Chicago firsthand when we played against the Bears. Montez Sweat is one of those guys that's like a disruptor. He's a game record type player. He's becoming one of those better pass rushers, and I really feel like he didn't get his just due when he played with Washington. And to be honest, I'm surprised that the Washington Commanders, all of those years for them to have Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat, they definitely underachieved with the defensive line that they had. That should have been one of the best defensive lines of all time. But I really feel like with the lack of balance, as far as the Commanders not being able to find a quarterback, them not having a solid offense, really came back to hurt them. But yeah, man, that's definitely they definitely had one of the better defensive lines. Just Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen alone, those two guys, all of those guys were first round picks. They had four first round picks playing on their defensive line, but that always harkens back to what I say about you don't need all first rounders in a certain position group. You have to have guys that cater to one another and play off of one another really well. So it goes back to our Falcons when I keep saying, yes, Ruka Rororo is not a name that nobody knew. Brandon Dorless, not really a splash name that people knew, but they probably will play well in this scheme because they fit the actual scheme and they'll fit in and come in and play the role that they're being asked to play. They're not going to see themselves as I'm an all-star, I'm a superstar. I don't want to be the guy that's holding a point or trying to stop the run. I want to be a guy that's going to get 10 sacks. But when you go out and get guys that are scheme fits, they'll be willing to come in and just play their role. They're not going to be worried about getting the shine, basically. And let's see here. In Georgia, boy says, "What's good, Jew? Just catching the show. Oh, no problem, man. You're gonna have to watch it on the playback. But I appreciate you joining me, man. Yeah, I'm getting ready to wrap this thing up. But I appreciate you joining me, bro." And he says, if we bring back Bud, that will take from Trice or Malone. I don't think that it'll take from them. I think that they will be able to learn from Bud Dupree, if anything. If we seen last year, Bud Dupree, I don't really feel like is going to come in and step on any toes. I think he'll just be a veteran guy in the room that can help these younger guys as far as understanding technique and things of that nature. And a prime example of that is just looking at Zach Harrison. To me, Zach Harrison took a huge jump from week one of being a rookie to the end of the season. We seen later in the season when Zach Harrison started to actually get snaps when guys went down, like Grady Jarrett went down with injury for for the season. Yamada went down for a couple games. Then we had Katavius Street go down for the year. And then when Zach Harrison got his opportunity, because he had been putting in that practice, putting in that time with Calais Campbell, it really showed, that Calais Campbell did have an impact on his game. So I don't think that it'll hurt Trice or Malone if you bring Bud Dupree back, especially if it's on a realistic deal. Like, I don't think that you're gonna have to break the bank for either Calais or Bud Dupree. Because last year Bud Dupree played on like a veteran type deal. I think it was no more than like $5 million for one season. So you can bring Bud back I'll bring him back for like a 2-year deal if I were the Falcons, because he's only, I think, 31 or he's like in his early 30s. So Bud is still a guy that still has some juice left. But with that being said, man, I'm gonna get ready to wrap the show up, man. I appreciate each and every one of you guys joining me for another edition of What's the Word, Dirty Bird. As y'all see scrolling on the bottom of the screen, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And don't just subscribe here to my channel here at Jew Talk Sports, but if you enjoy couples talk, marriage, family, children, also please go over to the You and I podcast. That's with me and my wife Amanda. Y'all definitely hit that like and subscribe button there as well. We usually drop content every Monday, so be on the lookout for that. But of course, this week I have a lot more content coming for you guys. But as always, Falcons Nation, rise up, be blessed, peace.